Hello, my name is Alex Bernard, and I will be going over the Module 6 presentation on connecting data and theory. Um, the information was from the oerdata.ed.gov website. I'll put it at the end of the slide. And I just want to mention off the bat that I was unable to get the information from the school that I currently teach at. It's a private school. So I did the district that my children are in school at right now. So I just wanted to put up a few statistics about the town. So we're in the city of Benicia, and it's just northeast of San Francisco. The median household income's around 90,000, mean household income around 110,000. Fun facts that Benicia was the third capital of California. There's a lot of great historical buildings, and it's kind of just a little gem up on the water. It is relatively unappealing to some people because our largest employer is the Valero Benicia refinery. And I thought it was worth putting in that our poverty rate's just a little bit over 7%. The population of Benicia is only 28,000, and it's majority white and 15% Hispanic, only 5.5% Black, less than 0.5% of Native American, 10.5% Asian, less than 0.5% of Pacific Islanders, and around 6.5% of two or more races. Benicia Unified is a relatively small district. There's only just over 5,000 students enrolled, and there's 8 schools in total, 4 elementary schools, Joe Henderson, Robert Semple, Mary Farmer, Matthew Turner, and we have 1 middle school, 2 high schools, Benicia High School, Liberty High School. Liberty High School is a really small high school that just works with students to remediate classes that they need to do, or if they need an alternative learning approach. Some behaviorally disturbed students will go there, or students that want to try to finish early will go there. So any kind of, just kind of another option that Benicia offers. So when we're looking at of the students enrolled, there's a few more percentage-wise male than female. We're at about 12.5% Black, 1.5% Native, 18.7% Asian, 14.3% Hispanic, 1.2 Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, 40.4% white, 2 or more races, 3.5%. When we're looking at the limited English proficiency, we're just about at 0.5%. Only 30 students in our district are labeled with a limited English proficiency. Under the IDEA, there's 7.7% of our students, so we're at about 391 students. We have 2.9% of the students that have a 504 learning plan, so about 147 students. When we're looking at the students with disabilities under IDEA for the district, 7% of our students end up with some kind of IEP. So it's worth noting here that there's 0% American Indian with an IEP, and we did have about 1.5% of the students at the school that are of a Native Indian descent, and 0% with an IEP. Asian, we have a really big underrepresentation there, with 2.8% of the Asian population being under with an IEP. Again, the district is 18.7%. We have an overrepresentation of Black students actually a slight underrepresentation. We have 12.4% Black, and then of that, we have 11.1. I'm sorry, my math just got so confusing. Okay. We have an overrepresentation, which was predicted in a lot of the readings under the generalized concepts. For Hispanic students, we have 8.2%, and there's 14.3% Hispanic students in our district, and 8.2% are labeled with an IEP. For Native, Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander, we have 0%, and 2 or more 6.7, white 7.5%. When we look at this by gender, we see males have exceedingly more are exceedingly more labeled with IEPs than females for every race. Especially, it's worth noting for Black students here, we're at a 16.3% for for men and male, and 6.2 for female. For students with disabilities under IDEA that have a limited English proficiency, for all students, we have 9.6 and 4.2 for female. With an LEP, 30.8% are male, so there's no female LEP. When I looked at the 504 learning plan, there's 3.1 students, so there was, remember, 147 students with 504 learning plans, and here we see a really big number of American Indian and Alaska Natives here with 5.3. This is a really big jump from, and kind of a surprising overrepresentation here. Asian is low, Black is low for the percentage, Hispanic is 2. We have more white students with the 504 learning plan, but again, the district's heavily weighted with white students, so that might be part of the reason here. When we're looking at gender with the 504 learning plans, it's surprisingly mixed here. We do have, where there's 2 or more races, it's all the men, white, a few more males. Black and Hispanics, really close here. Asian, there's more females, and then the American Indian Alaskan Native, there's more females. So, but overall, more males. And again, when we look at the students of the 504 LEP, there's neither male nor female. When I took a look at discipline, we had 106 in-school suspensions, 195 out-of-school suspensions, and 10 expulsions. And the tie charts aren't too surprising when we're looking at them. Except there is the overrepresentation of Black students in the in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, and expulsions, which is predicted in almost all of the literature. Asian underrepresentation here in school suspensions, and under for out-of-school suspensions, slightly over for expulsions. And then everything else is relatively of prediction. When we look at discipline of IDEA versus non-IDEA, we have a pretty big representation here. Remember, out of the 5,000 students we only have 391 students with IEPs in the school district, but they made up for 7.7%. So they make up for 7.7% of the district enrollment, but 21% of the in-school suspension. So there's a really big number there, and 25.1% out of school, 20% of expulsion. So there's a really big overrepresentation here of the IDEA students. When we look at discipline for the IDEA students by race, there's, again, for in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, and expulsions, a really big discrepancy in race here for Blacks with the overrepresentation. So I looked at the elementary school that my kids attended for a specific school, and I looked at Joe Henderson Elementary. So there's only 572 students enrolled. The male and female percentages are just about the same as the districts were, and there's 10.7% Black, so 61 students there. The percentages really align similarly with the district. For LEP, there's only 4 students there that are noted with a limited English proficiency. This data was from 2015, so it's slightly outdated, but we'd expect the trends to be about the same. So under IDEA, there's 38 students, and a 504 learning plan, there's 10. When we're talking about students with disabilities under this IDEA here, we do see, in general, the same kind of discrepancies that we saw district-wide with the percentages are relatively similar, except for when we look at 2 or more. We still have this overrepresentation, Black students with disabilities here. it was kind of difficult when we were looking at these by gender, just because of the really low amounts of students with under IDEA at Joe Henderson. So 7.7% of all students, male students, and 4% of females. 20% for Black students under the IDEA for students with disabilities. It's a huge overrepresentation there. Hispanics, females, this is relatively surprising from everything that we've read, the information we've read. LEP school males, 100%. There's no females there under the LEP. When I looked at 504s, the American Indian, Alaska Native category was really surprising. This is something that we don't usually see have such an overrepresentation here. Everything else falls in about the same as, oh, sorry, that was with the district. So when we're comparing district-wide, that was that 5.3%. There's none at Joe Henderson in the light green. When we look at 504 by gender, again, we have the same issues with just the low amounts of students with 504s at Joe Henderson. So there is an overrepresentation of male, a huge 5.7% of Black students, male students have a 504 learning plan. This is a really big overrepresentation, and it's been illustrated in all the data that we read under discrete theory. For students with a 504 learning plan, there's 0% with an LEP. When I was looking at discipline patterns at Joe Henderson, there's no IDEA students that receive disciplinary action. So we do see this overrepresentation here again of American Indian, Alaskan Natives here, and as well as Black students. And the main takeaway that I had is when reading the discrete theory, Benicia Unified and Joe Henderson almost exclusively align with Conner and Frary's 4 ways that overrepresentation of students of color in special education reinforce racial hierarchy in the United States. The first was the underrepresentation of Asian Americans. The second was the exclusion of Native Americans. And third was the overrepresentation of Latinx students. And 4 was the overrepresentation of Black students. And all the data that we have supports this information here. These were the sources that I used. I used the main data search from the ocrdata.ed.gov. All the graphs were pulled from that website. Thanks.